Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back. We're gonna try something new today, and that is discussing possible future matchups after UFC 314. Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. This is gonna be a prediction for fighters you guys actually care about, which means no WMA outside of the top 10, and no covering the losers of the majority of the prelim fights. You guys will probably get the gist of this video because 10 other people have probably made something similar to this. So I'm not going to waste any more time and we're going to get straight into the video. All right, let's jump into the obvious one first. Alexander Volkanovski. He just beat Diego Lopez this Saturday. The only person left in the division for him is Movsar Evloev. Look, I don't want Evloev to win the title. If Evloev wins the belt, I might consider deleting this channel, but there is literally no one else, and I'm fully confident that Volkanovski beats Movsar Evloev. So you know what? Give Evloev the title shot. He deserves it. I would not be saying this if Diego Lopez won the featherweight strap because Grumlev over here is a really bad matchup for Lopez. However, I have no fear that our featherweight short king Alexander Volkanovski can beat Movsar Evloev. Volkanovski's got really good anti wrestling, and he's like much better than Movsar Evloev on the feet. Movsar's whole game is based on pressure wrestling and boxing. I don't think it works against Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski is faster. I think Volkanovski has better technique. He has more variety in his shots. And plus, if Evloev is gonna try to take him down and wrestle, is Evloev gonna hold down Volkanovski for like 5 straight minutes? I highly doubt it. Again, this is the only reason I'm campaigning for a Movsar Evloev title shot because I know that Volkanovski should win this fight, but you never know. Evloev is still really good. And yeah, we can give Volkanovski a title defense, and then Volkanovski can retire as the featherweight GOAT. Moving on to Diego Lopez. He lost to Alexander Volkanovski 49-46. I don't understand why some people are calling it a robbery. Volkanovski clearly outstruck Lopez like by 4 rounds, maybe three at minimum. But there is one matchup here that makes a whole lot of sense to me right now. Yair Rodriguez. I swear if the UFC screw this up and give Rodriguez a title shot, I'm going to flip the fuck out. I would rather want Grumlev over here getting a title shot than to see Rodriguez's bitch ass get another undeserved title shot after this fight just because he's Mexican. I believe this is the obvious matchup for both. You can have them talk nonstop shit for the press conference to make that exciting. And style wise, you know you're in for a knockout. Have Diego Lopez butcher Yair Rodriguez at UFC 320, Guadalajara, Mexico. Both of these guys have beef, and both of these guys want to fight on the Guadalajara card. Have them fight each other. Bonus points if we pan the cameras over to the corners after the fight as well. So, yeah, no brainer for a fight. Please book this UFC. Moving on to Paddy Pimblett. He dominated Michael Chandler over 3 rounds before getting the finish. Uh, there are options for Paddy Pimblett here. You could give him Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier, but let's be real. The fight that everybody wants to see is Charles Oliveira versus Paddy Pimblett. Out of everyone here, I think this is the most interesting fight. Like I'm gonna be honest, no one cares about Paddy Pimblett fighting Justin Gaethje because Gaethje will probably get subbed in like 2 rounds. The Poirier fight is interesting, but I don't find it nearly as interesting as Charles Oliveira because I want to see whose jujitsu is actually better between the two. Like a year ago, I would have laughed in your face if you told me that Paddy Pimblett would be fighting Charles Oliveira for a title elimination bout. But now it's not ridiculous to say. Like Paddy Pimblett looked really good out there against Michael Chandler. I still think Charles Oliveira wins, but it's a lot more competitive than I thought initially before this fight. So yeah, Paddy Pimblett, he's earned himself a top five shot, and Charles Oliveira, he's gonna need to do a little bit more before a title shot because Islam Makhachev kind of just destroyed him in their fight. So it's kind of hard to sell that. Plus, Oliveira's only coming off a win to Michael Chandler. and he lost to Armin before that. So we're gonna have to wait for Armin to even get a fight first, unless Armin just loses to Justin Gaethje or something. But either way, I want to see this fight. I think the jiu-jitsu scrambles will be sick to watch. And on the feet, I think it's gonna be more competitive than people think now because Paddy Pimblett's pretty good. Again, I still believe Oliveira's better, but you will you be surprised if Paddy Pimblett wins? Not too much. Like Paddy Pimblett's getting better. I think the UFC will look at this fight and go, "Oh, this is gonna be like plus 200K pay-per-views, even though it's not a title fight." So yeah, book this fight or the Poirier fight, but I would much rather see Paddy Pimblett fight Charles Oliveira. Moving on to Michael Chandler. He lost to Paddy Pimblett this Saturday. We're gonna see him at the bottom now. I think we're done giving Chandler all these high profile matchups. It's time Chandler gives someone on the come up with no name value at a shop for a top 10 ranking. Now, there are a lot of guys that are outside of the rankings that we could give him, but the guy I chose for this video is still within the rankings, and that is Grant Dawson. This is sink or swim for Michael Chandler, and I think it's time Grant Dawson got his jump up in competition because other than Bobby Green, Dawson won every other fight. Is Dawson the most exciting fighter ever? No. But who do you put Dawson up against at this point? You can't really put him up against another unranked prospect because Dawson may well fraud check that unranked prospect. And I know that he got knocked out by Bobby Green like 2 years ago. I guess it was a fluke. I think it's safe to say it was a fluke because other than that, Dawson's looked incredible in almost every single fight. I will still say who would I go with? I'll go with Grant Dawson. I know Dawson's very dodgy on the feet, but again, I think his grappling is almost too comparable to the level of Paddy Pimblett. So yeah, give Grant Dawson the jump up in the rankings. Like he's already on a 3 fight win streak, and Michael Chandler, this is sink or swim. If he loses this, see you in retirement, buddy. But if not, then we can talk about him fighting someone within the top 10 again. Moving on to Patricio Pitbull. He lost to Yair Rodriguez. I know Dan Ige is calling for a matchup against Pitbull. The UFC has other plans for Dan Ige, who I will talk about later in this video. But as for the guy who I chose for to fight Pitbull, Josh Emmett. Tell me this isn't going to be an insane fight. You know someone is getting brutally chinned in this fight. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be Pitbull. Pitbull can catch Emmett. It's not like Emmett has this impenetrable guard, and it's not like Emmett does well, like off the front foot, other than winging like overhand rights. I would put this on the main card opener of a pay per view during the summer. Both of these guys are pretty old. They don't have that much time left in their careers, and they didn't take that much damage in their last fights. So I reckon have one of these two sink or swim. Winner stays in the UFC. Loser probably shipped off to the GFL if it's still open. But yeah, I think this will be a pretty sick matchup considering Pitbull's name as well as the style itself. Moving on to Jean Silva, he mauled Bryce Mitchell and is probably going to get a huge jump up in competition for the win. Now, you've heard some people talk about Lerone Murphy or a Brian Ortega. For Lerone Murphy, it doesn't make too much sense because Murphy is also on a hot streak and looking for a top 5 opponent. Maybe Brian Ortega, but I don't even know if he's actually going to stick around at featherweight or not. So I reckon we give Gene Silva someone who can match his autism chrome for chrome. And that is Arnold Allen. You know, as a big Arnold Allen glazer, this really hurts me. This really does. I would prefer they just give John Silva to Brian Ortega so Silva can just beat up on that punching bag and get another highlight reel finish. But the UFC is not going to do that for some reason because the company hates its hardcore fans. And in an ideal world, yes, we just feed John Silva, Brian Ortega, but I'm preparing for the worst. And unfortunately, they're gonna give John Silva, our other autistic Pookie Bear, Arnold Allen. I'm hoping Arnold Allen can win that fight. It's gonna be hard though. Right off the top of my head, I can just see John Silva cracking Arnold Allen because Allen just leaves his chin a lot every time he hits. He's just like swinging big meaty hooks, and I can see Silva get just catching him in the middle of that. But yeah, I think this is a appropriate jump up in competition for John Silva and for Arnold Allen. If he can beat John Silva, title elimination bout, or maybe even the title shot. Who knows? Like people are saying that Movsar Evloev robbed him. I don't think it's too far fetched to say that he's very close to the title shot, despite losing to Holloway and Evloev. Moving on to Bryce Mitchell, he's coming off a mollywhopping from John Silva. It's tough for Bryce, man. It really is because the UFC are gonna put this man through the ringer. Now, in an ideal world, they give Bryce Mitchell Pat Sabatini because the style is fun. I think that would be a pretty cool matchup to see, jiu-jitsu wise, especially. I don't see the UFC really doing that. I reckon they're gonna try to kill Bryce Mitchell again. So, with that in mind, we have Du Ho Choi. Listen, the people who watched Du Ho Choi fight Nate Landwehr know how bad of a stylistic matchup this is for Bryce Mitchell because Nate Landwehr does a lot of things similarly to Bryce Mitchell, and Choi just beat the shit out of Nate Landwehr back in UFC 310. Is this Korean bias speaking? Yes, but at the same time, can you name a matchup outside the rankings that you know for sure will beat Bryce Mitchell? Maybe like I don't know, Nathaniel Wood. How good is Nathaniel Wood at defending takedowns? I think Duho Choi kind of proved that he is like a very bad stylistic matchup for Bryce Mitchell a couple months back. And that's what the UFC is going to be looking for because they're on the Bryce Mitchell humiliation tour before he gets cut from the promotion shortly after. I'm rooting for both of these guys in a way, but I just think that Duo Choi is going to beat Bryce Mitchell. Moving on to our future light heavyweight GOAT, Dominic Reyes. The title run is back, guys. Reyes knocked out Krylov in the first round. Now, there are a few options for Reyes at the moment, but I believe this fight makes the most sense. And that is Alexander Rakic. This is how we get Reyes to the title. I'm going to be real. I never understood why so many people glaze Alexander Rakic. I don't really get it. Like, yeah, Rakic can get takedowns occasionally, and his kicks are nice, but the dude never fights with any aggression whatsoever. I want to see Reyes back in the title picture, so I believe this is the perfect matchup for Dominic Reyes. Maybe Reyes could angle for the Jan Blachowicz rematch, but I prefer this one because one, it's a fresh matchup, and it's two, it's about time Rakic fought someone below him in the rankings because Rakic lost to Jan Blachowicz just to get a title elimination bout with Yuri Prohaska, just to get another title elimination bout with Magomed Ankalaev. It's bullshit, and Rakic needs to fight someone on a hot streak that is below him in the rankings. And that someone is Dominic Reyes. Moving on to Nikita Krylov. He lost to Dominic Reyes in the first round. I say give him Bogdan Guskov. There are a lot of light heavyweights outside of the top 10 that are on a hell of a win streak, and Bogdan Guskov is one of those prospects. Now, Krylov did just get trimmed brutally, so maybe he's not thinking of returning anytime soon. But right now, everyone else is booked. Azamat Mirzakhanov is fighting Johnny Walker. Omar Sy is fighting Alonzo Manyfield. And Ming Yang Zhang is fighting Anthony Smith. Maybe the UFC waits for one of these prospects to win their respective matchup. But it kind of depends on whether or not the prospect wins their matchup or not. Why not figure that out much later down the road and give Krylov a matchup you know is going to be available for Bogdan Guskov? Moving on, we have Dan Ige. He beat Sean Woodson via controversial decision, but for some reason, all three judges scored the fight 2-0 for Ige before the third round, so technically Ige was going to win the fight regardless. I know Patricio Pitbull called him out this morning, but I don't believe the matchmakers are going to do that because the matchmakers never give the matchups Ige asks for. So what do we do for Dan Ige? Aaron Pico. It's a very realistic fight. The UFC, for some reason, loves Aaron Pico, even though Pico hasn't done shit in the UFC. They're going to try and get him to the title as soon as possible. Let's give him Dan Ige. You know, Dan Ige will take that fight. Dan Ige will take any fight. And plus, Aaron Pico, he's from Bellator, wasn't even a champion, so we can't really give him a top 10 opponent or anything bullshit like that. But I reckon this is a justifiable matchup considering how much the UFC loves Dan Ige. I'm sorry, Aaron Pico. And for Dan Ige, again, he'll fight anyone at any time as long as the UFC calls him. So yeah, I think this is the matchup to make. I think Ige wins this, but you never know. I need to watch more tape on Aaron Pico. Moving on, we have Chase Hooper. He won against Jim Miller by decision, and now he has built himself a 5-fight win streak. I like the callouts that Chase Hooper made during his post-fight interview, but I don't see the matchup realistically materializing. Fares Siam could be getting a ranked opponent soon. And as for Tom Nolan, I think he's a little bit far away from Chase Hooper right now. So, who do we give him to fight? Who do we give Chase Hooper to fight for a future ranked opponent? Give him Nasrat Haqparast. Both of these guys are on a 5-fight win streak, but the difference being Haqparast shouldn't have won his last 2 fights. So Haqparast should be taking a step down in competition, whereas Hooper should be getting a step up. I think this is a very interesting fight because I've never seen anyone test Haqparast in grappling before. I know Haqparast is sharp with his boxing combinations and shit, but he doesn't have one punch knockout power, and he gasses out rather quickly as the fight progresses. Is Haqparast good enough to keep the fight standing, or will Chase Hooper dominate him on the ground just like he did to everyone else? I personally believe in the latter, but if you don't really know until you see Haqparast get tested by a good grappler. And I reckon Chase Hooper is that good grappler to test Haqparast whether or not Haqparast is actually top 15 material or not. I reckon the judges will be more fair considering they don't outright rob an upcoming star in Chase Hooper. And I believe this is a matchup that can propel either winner to a ranked contender in the lightweight division. Moving on, we have Julian Rosa. He brutally beat up on old man Darren Elkins. Julian Rosa finds himself on a 3-fight win streak in 2025. This is truly revolutionary stuff. That being said, I reckon it's time for Erosa to get a jump up in competition, and that would be against Sadiq Youssef. It's been a while since Youssef has fought. I reckon if Youssef is still fighting, this is an approachable matchup for both guys. Youssef hasn't fought since the Diego Lopez KO loss, so I actually want to see Youssef fight it soon. This will kind of tell me whether or not Erosa is just fluking wins, or if Erosa is actually pretty good. Because if you beat Sadiq Youssef, you have to be pretty good. Plus, Rosa didn't take any damage in this fight, so I reckon you can probably make this fight for a headliner or a crowded fight night, or just on the main card of an Apex event. Either way, I think this is a sick unranked featherweight bout. Moving on to Mikhail Olisechuk, coming off a round 1 TKO over Cedricus Dumas. The guy I believe the UFC will match Olisechuk up with is Eric Anders. Both of these guys are coming off wins against relatively low level competition. I think this would be a competitive fight skill wise and stylistically because we know Anders isn't the best on the feet, but his grappling's pretty good. Whereas it's the opposite for Mikhail Olisechuk. This is approachable for both guys. It's not like we're putting Olisechuk through the ringer again by having him fight like a Teba Gautier. Plus, Anders loves to take his time off in between fights, and I think he's taken enough time off to be honest. I usually try to think of matchups based on schedule. But again, Anders loves to fight once every 8 to 9 months, whereas Olasechik is a pretty active guy. I'd say their schedules pretty much align up together. So I say put this on the prelims of a pay per view or have this on the main card of an Apex fight night. Moving on to Sumudarji, who's coming off a win to Mitch Raposo. This fight was shit to watch, and Sumudarji was coming off 3 losses before that. So I don't think Sumudarji's gonna really get a big jump up in competition. I really had to think hard for this one because on the one hand, yeah, he's coming off a win, but at the same time, Mitch Raposo is dog shit. So I don't really rate that win all that much. I'd say give Sumudarji Kevin Borjas. Borjas just fraud checked Ronaldo Rodriguez 2 weeks ago. I believe where both of these guys stand in the division, it kind of makes sense because Borjas just dominated Ronaldo Rodriguez, so the UFC have to give Borjas steps up in competition. And Sumudarji, I know he won the fight, but that was ass. And if I were a matchmaker, I wouldn't really think much about giving Sumudarji a jump up in competition. So match these two up. Winner gets someone who's just outside the rankings of the division. Put this on the prelims of a fight night card. You know it's going to be a sick unranked flyweight bout. Last but not least, we have Marco Tulio. He knocked out Trayshawn Gore in the second round, and he looked amazing doing so. Does that warrant him a top 15 caliber opponent? No, because I think there is a substantial gap between Trayshawn Gore and someone actually ranked. That being said, I do believe Tulio deserves a substantial jump up. So the opponent I picked for Tulio to fight is Brad Tavares. Tavares is a guy that's hovering around the top 25 area ish of the division. It's clear that he's not good enough to be ranked, but at the same time, he's the guy you have to go through in order to be ranked. Usually, guys who beat Tavares in impressive fashion get ranked opposition like 1 or 2 fights later. Another thing to note is that Tavares fought the week before on this card, so I believe timing wise, it works out for both of these guys. And stylistically, I believe this is going to be fireworks. Tavares is a little bit tricky, but it's going to be a standing fight, and I reckon Tulio should be able to piece up Brad Tavares. It's pretty hard to finish Tavares, but if Tulio can do it, then we know he's legit, and then we can talk about him against Roman Dolidze or Marvin Vittori. But either way, I think Brad Tavares is a comfortable step up in competition. Alright, that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys agree with the matchups. And also let me know if you guys want to see more videos like this in the future. But other than that, make sure to like and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.